We thought about doing this one a while back, and it just seemed like a right time because it seems like lately we've been doing a lot of violent movies. And then we do something to calm it down, and then violence, and then calm it down. And, actually, next week is going to be violent too, so I guess we're going to do this for a bit. It's not necessarily a theme or anything, it's just how it's going to roll for a while.
I guess the reason for doing this one now would be it's the start of the summer.
Exactly.
I guess.
And basically, when the start of the summer usually means in film, it's time to come of age. And these are very great examples of coming of age movies. So we're going to see what happens when My Girl takes on Now and Then. AJ, take it away.
Well, the thing about these two in particular is the fact that generally when you think of coming of age movies, you don't normally see. Usually they're from a boy's perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
Like with Stand By Me or The Sandlot or The Goonies. Like The Goonies had, girls in it, but they were Martha Plimpton and Carrie Green were just kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was mainly about them. And the only time we've really gotten coming of age movies for girls was kind of the John Hughes era.
Yeah.
But it wasn't so much as it was more like girls in their late teens trying to figure out what to do with their lives, like with their future.
After high school.
Yeah, not so much these type of movies where it's them actually just growing up and being kids and not focusing on the future or the past, but just the task at hand. Which I think is almost a direct line that Demi Moore says in Now and Then, actually.
I believe that's correct.
I had actually planned on saying that before I remembered she said that. But anyway, so yeah, that's why I'd say that I would choose these two. But also, they're both set in the 70s, so... we'll start with My Girl to get it out of the way. Because...
We're back to Aykroyd again.
Yes.
There's your connection. There we go.
So, I will do my best to talk about My Girl without getting really fucking sad.
Good luck, sir.
It's set in 1972, and it's kind of unlike any family coming-of-age comedy we've seen because it's about a little girl who is basically raised in a funeral parlor and just so happens to be dealing with the guilt of having killed her mother, is the way she puts it, because she died in childbirth. Well, she actually died 2 days after childbirth. But that was from the complications that did her in. And we follow Veda Sultenfuss, who is Anna Chlumsky, who hadn't done anything before, but now she's known for, Veep, mainly. She pops up in movies every now and then, like in The Loop, which were the same people that did Veep, but... and she lives with her dad, Dan Aykroyd, who is the owner of the funeral parlor and the undertaker, and he basically just runs the whole thing.
Gave me an interesting visual.
And then they meet a makeup artist who is Jamie Lee Curtis, who thinks it's a beauty parlor until Harry has to tell her exactly what's going on.
Wow.
But she takes it anyway because she likes them, and is eventually Harry's love interest. And Veda's best friend Thomas J, who is Macaulay Culkin, literally fresh off Home Alone. This was right between Home Alone and Home Alone 2. You'll notice throughout the entire movie, except for a crucial point, he wears glasses. But on the cover, we can't show him wearing the glasses because then it obstructs that it's the big Home Alone star. You can't be hiding that from audiences now, can you?
Not after Home Alone first came out.
Yeah. And mainly what makes this movie as great as it is, everything about this movie makes it as great as it is, but obviously the one thing they really needed to not fuck up was to make Veda a character that everybody would love that watches this movie. And she is, as weird and out there as she is, she's very easy to love. We get so many different aspects of her personality, like she has a writing teacher played by Griffin Dunne that she has a crush on, even though she is 11 years old and he is Griffin Dunne. there's this funny scene where after we learn about her crush on him, she goes into her room and she sings badly. And she has the school picture. And it's all of them with him on the end. And his head is surrounded by a heart. And if you look to his left, all the kids are facing the camera, and she's looking up at him like he's godly. Obviously, because on account of her mom and the fact that she has to literally live in a funeral parlor, she is obsessed with death and has this thing where whenever somebody is brought to the house for a funeral, she learns how they died and is under the impression that she has the exact same symptoms and she's going to die of what they just died of.
She's a hypochondriac.
It also helps that she narrates the whole movie. Normally, narration can be a little much and pointless, but her narration adds a whole new likability to her character because it basically gives us her thought process and how she registers things as opposed to just saying, this is what's happening, like a normal narration is. Another thing, a great thing, is the relationship she has with Thomas J. is also one of the main focuses, which is basically when you're kids and you hang out with somebody of the opposite sex and everybody makes fun of you because you don't want to say your boyfriend or girlfriend because at 11 that's yucky. So they always get made fun of for that, but obviously they're best friends and they actually don't care when nobody's around and do whatever. Like they have the blood brother scene, which, as endearing as it is extremely dangerous in real life, where she accidentally cuts her finger on the fish hook, and so she has him pick his scab off his arm so they can be blood brothers by rubbing it together. The scene where they're each other's first kiss. But while we know that she really cares about him, she's always doing the thing where she's always giving him a hard time, like calls him retard and brain dead and makes fun of him because he's allergic to everything. And there's a scene I love where she's gonna run away because she just always has to be picking on him. Her plan is to run away from home because Shelley and Harry are engaged now, and she's gonna live with the Brady Bunch in Hollywood. And when Thomas J says, "Hey, I want to come," she says, "There's not gonna be room for you. You're gonna have to live with the Partridge Family." And then they barely get very far, and nobody's even noticed she's run away. When she discovers her period for the first time, she thinks she's hemorrhaging. And she pushes him off the porch and says, "Don't come back from 5 to 7 days." But while all of this is basically what makes the movie what it is, what's really interesting about this that more coming-of-age movies didn't do was, there's a particular segment in Now and Then where we focus on Gabby Hoffman's mom and how she is dating Hank Azaria after her dad left. But it's just seen as, new people in parents' life bad. That's usually what coming-of-age movies do, and just leave it at that. The whole other half of this entire movie is the relationship between Harry and Shelley and how it comes to be. Like, when they go out on their date, instead of, sitting at home with Veda, just watching her say, "Oh, Shelley's evil and I hate her," we actually go on the date. But we also get to see it from Veda's perspective because she goes and picks up Thomas J. and they spy on them while they're at the bingo game. Which breaks into hilarity. I love those two old guys that they start a fight with. Because Harry and Shelley are finally loosened up and are about to kiss for the first time. So Veda decides to distract everybody by screaming bingo. And one of the old guys actually knows that it came from outside and somebody didn't get a bingo, and it starts this fight between them. I would watch a whole movie based on those two guys at this bingo game. The line, "If you weren't 200 years old, I'd kick your wrinkled ass." And they're like 90 years old, and they start to get into a physical altercation over this.
Like Statler and Waldorf.
Yes. And then the romantic scene where Harry and Shelley go into her camper and they dance and all that. The Harry Shelley storyline is a really nice story to follow, and it's really, really well written too. The whole movie is really Unfortunately, not to its credit, now and then kind of lives off cliches a little bit. Whereas My Girl feels really, really fresh and original, not only just from the perspective of where it's coming from, but just when you listen to the dialogue in the movie itself, it's really refreshing. Um, well, okay. Do you know how if you really love movies and you spend a lot of your life watching them, generally you're gonna maybe if you don't remember what they were specifically, there is always that one movie that stands out where it was the first movie where you said wow while watching it, like probably a big budget action movie or something. And then there's that one movie that you see for the first time that just makes you laugh harder than you've ever laughed before. To go along with this, generally and probably easier to remember than the first movie that made you say wow or made you laugh really hard. I think you always remember the very first movie that made you really, really fucking sad. I don't know about anybody else, but for me, it was this. This is the first time I remember actually just being emotionally ripped apart by a movie. And I was maybe 10 or 11 the first time I saw it. Maybe younger than that, I don't know. It's actually a few things. And I'm really surprised. I don't know that a movie today would have the balls to do this.
No.
A movie that's seen as a coming-of-age family movie. This movie has this movie has a really serious death theme going on. Mainly about, like, it turns into just these funny, like, Harold and Maude kind of obsession with death things. When it really turns the story into accepting death from a lot of different ways. Like Harry accepting the death of his wife and Veda accepting the death of Thomas J, and both of them accepting, what happened in general and why. After the kissing scene, she talks about how, earlier she wanted to talk about how she wanted to marry Griffin Dunn no matter what. And Thomas J has this scene where he says, would you consider me if you don't get to marry him? And they go their separate ways. Well, earlier in the movie, there was a scene where Veda lost her mood ring, which another way she gives him a hard time is it's always black for some reason, and she says it's because of him. And she loses it near this beehive. And they end up running and doing it's a great coming-of-age shot that you always think of where they jump off the dock and into the water to escape the bees. Well, they go their separate ways on this day. And Thomas J is going through the woods and comes across the beehive again. But he's looking for her ring because he wants to find it and give it back to her. Well, as we learned earlier, he's allergic to everything. Including bees. So when they come out of the hive and attack him, you know something is horribly wrong when the very next scene is a cop showing up at Aykroyd's house. And we don't hear the dialogue, but we know what's being said. You can hear little pieces of it over the score, but you don't actually hear him flat out say what happened. And then there's this scene, and God bless Anna Chlumsky and Dan Aykroyd, because they fucking own this scene, and that's what really makes it work. The scene where Harry has to come in and tell Veda what happened. There's a lot of hard scenes to watch in this movie, and I almost think that one's up there I think that's up there along with the funeral itself. The scene where he actually has to tell her what happened, and we have to watch her react to it. And she goes to the doctor about it's this painful callback to the earlier scenes where she has this doctor that she goes to every day saying she has one of the symptoms of the dead people. And she goes to him because she says she can't breathe because of bee stings. The whole movie from here on it was really hard to sit through. And this scene, as if this poor girl hasn't been through enough, It's her best friend's funeral, and of course, as her luck would have it, because this is the whole setup, her best friend's funeral is in her own house. So she just can't escape it. She can stay upstairs, but Shelley kind of convinces her to come down. There is, and to Jamie Lee Curtis's credit, there is a great scene here where she has to confront Harry about how he has to open his eyes and realize what she's going through. The lines where she says, life isn't just about death and to not ignore the living. Because Harry's basically just... Ever since his wife died, he's basically only seen Veda in his peripherals. And that's it. So... Alright. I don't want to talk about it. Okay. So we have this emotionally horrific scene where Veda does decide to come downstairs. And she just has the worst breakdown where she goes up to the casket and tries to talk to him. And reminds everybody that he wanted to be an acrobat and that they took his glasses off before they put him in the casket. And Harry has to literally pry her away. And then she runs away. Oh, God. She runs away to Griffin Dunn's house, and he's on his way to the funeral. And there's this... It's so heartbreaking with everything she's been through. She confesses her love to him. And it's this really... Oh, God. And just as she does this emotionally crippling scene of confessing her love to him, his fiancée comes out. Oh, God. But then we have the follow-up scene where she finally gets back home and everything's fine. And then you have the really great scene between her and Aykroyd where they basically accept what happened to her mother. And he explains to her that all the great things about her and why he loved her and how even, you know, finding new love and after all these years later, if he sees like a flower that she would have liked, he's always going to have that sadness inside him. And she comes to accept that it wasn't her fault what happened. And then there's another subplot that was going on with this girl, Judy, who is basically... She's basically kind of the friend of the girls that pick on Veda. But she obviously strives to be Veda's friend and not theirs, but I guess by peer pressure, she goes along with them. So, eventually Judy starts to get away from them and wants to become Veda's friend, and then the end of the movie is them basically becoming best friends. And after all this heartache and all this sadness, the movie actually comes to a funny conclusion with its using her narration to great effect and the setting. Because after all this, Veda says, maybe everything will be all right now. Because one of the things she always went to the doctor for was she was convinced that there was a chicken bone always stuck in her throat. And she says that 3 great things happened this summer, and they're going to make everything okay. She finally swallowed that chicken bone. Her and Judy are going to be in the same homeroom, and the Republican Party just renominated Mr. Nixon. And that's the last line of the movie. So, yeah, it's such a wonderful movie despite being, you know, so emotionally hard to watch. Because it is really funny when it gets to, when it's not sad. I forgot to mention the really great scene with Danny and Ralph. Danny is Shelley's ex-husband, and they basically come back for her RV. I would have liked to see more scenes with those dudes as well, because it's a really interesting thing about, obviously he's very confrontational, and Harry has the great line where he punches Danny and then looks at Ralph and he says, he asks who he is, and Ralph says, I'm his brother, and he says, oh, I guess you're going to be visiting us a lot lately, and he says, why is that? And he says, because if your brother comes back here, I'm going to bury him in my front yard. But then in the next scene, it's dark, and they're kind of seeing them away civilly. So it makes me wonder if Danny and Ralph like stuck around and had burgers afterwards, or because Harry was trying to be nice before the altercation, offered them hot dogs and burgers. Did we have a really interesting, friendly scene for them before they left? And the Veda Shelley relationship with the she's obviously really really resentful towards Shelley, but there's those moments where Shelley kind of wins her back with the scene where they put makeup on her, where she puts makeup on her, and she says, I hold off on going to Hollywood and being a makeup artist like you want to do. And it's Shelley that she steals the money from to get into Griffin Dunn's class. And then when they meet up at the store, and Harry just says, do whatever you want, and walks away with Shelley. So you just see Veda angrily throwing pretty much everything she comes across into the cart. And the bumper cars when she learns about the engagement. It's interesting to see that love-hate relationship as the movie progresses with them. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of aspects about this movie to love, and they all work, I think. So that's what makes it so great. On top of the fact that no matter how many times you watch it, whether it be 5 or 500, it's probably almost always going to get an emotional reaction out of you, unless you are totally and completely inhuman. On a happier note, Now and Then isn't quite as bleak, but it's still, well, I don't know. Now and Then actually has a double murder.
Yeah.
Okay, Now and Then is the story of, it's also set in the 70s, and at the beginning of the summer. We see the 4 women who are Rosie O'Donnell, Melanie Griffith, Demi Moore, and Rita Wilson. And they are meeting up after a pact. It's kind of like It. They're meeting up after a pact because Chrissy is pregnant and having a baby shower. So they're having a get-together they haven't had for quite some time. And as soon as they get together, the rest of the movie is in flashback until the very end when they come back. But anyway, so you have Rosie O'Donnell is Christina Ricci. Melanie Griffith is Thora Birch, Demi Moore is Gabby Hoffman, and Rita Wilson is Ashley... Oh, God.
Moore.
Ashley Aston Moore, okay, yes. I thought I was confusing her with Demi Moore, but no, they're both Moore, okay. The sad thing about that actress is you probably haven't heard very much from her. She was in a few things, but she died of pneumonia when she was 26, so she's not as well known as the rest of the cast is now, but... even so, everybody is... The 4 child actresses are amazing. And it's basically another one of those... They're focusing on the task at hand. It's not really about, what they're going to do when the summer ends or in their future or whatever. They're just being kids in a summer in the 1970s. Going through various problems. The main plot is actually kind of... When I saw this for the first time, this plot caught me off guard because I was still fairly young when I saw this for the first time, and it was really, really late at night. So the whole Dear Johnny seance story really creeped me the fuck out. And the Crazy Pete thing, too. Basically, the main focus of what they do, even though it branches off into other things in an episodic kind of way, they like to do this seance to try to see... They tried to bring Marilyn Monroe back from the dead last time, and it didn't go very well. We don't know what happened. They just referred to in dialogue. So they see a big tombstone for a kid that died when he was like 12 in the 1940s. And his tombstone just says, Dear Johnny, so they decide to bring him back. And through a series of coincidences and events, they believe that they died. There's this eerie scene where Sam actually believes she sees like shadows on her wall, and she thinks she sees somebody out in the cemetery when it's raining. That whole thing just creeped me out. It's like, isn't this movie supposed to be happy and about youth? But yeah, it's the and they basically tried to solve the mystery of Dear Johnny, and his mother's death. While other things happen, like they play baseball and they get involved with bullies, and all that. Samantha's parents go through a divorce. The only trouble is well, it's set in a town called Shelby, which is basically Pleasantville, and the problem is it kind of, like I said, it kind of leans a lot on cliches a little bit, like the scene where Samantha and her little sister hide in bed together because you can hear the parents fighting in the other room, and then they watch the dad leave in the middle of the night, and then they resent their mom's new boyfriend, who I said was Hank Azaria. The boys, like the Wormers, they're kind of a cliche in themselves. The whole Crazy Pete isn't actually a crazy dude. He's actually really nice when you get to know him. He's Old Man Marley from Home Alone. That's exactly what he is. If you want to go back to Macaulay Culkin. But regardless of the cliches, it still manages to do something real likable, especially with the 4 characters that they have. Because all 4 of these characters are well-rounded and have their own personalities and all their own moments to shine. And then particularly, we realize that kind of 2 are more best friends with one than the other. Like, Tina and Samantha have that great scene where she gives her the bracelet and they have that heart-to-heart. And really, because Tina's kind of the sassy one of the group, and she's the one that's kind of almost seems like she's on the outside of them a little bit, because she's more like the I don't know, but that's when we got the idea that she was really how close she was with the rest of them. And then Roberta and Chrissy have that moment where Roberta has an obsession with death as well because of her mother's death in a car wreck when she was 4. So to cope with that, she tries to make death funny by constantly faking her death. Once again, bringing back the reference to Bud Cort and Harold and Maude. And there's one scene where she fakes drowning, and Tina and Samantha are arguing who's going to give her mouth to mouth. So Chrissy just pushes them both aside and does it for her, and then we learn that she was faking, and she says, well, now I guess I know who my friends are. And instead of saying, oh my god, I'm glad you're alive, Chrissy punches her in the face. And is really upset, and then confesses that Roberta, specifically, is her best friend in the world. And these, even though they're all 4 best friends, those 2 scenes where we learn that 2 are a little closer than the others kind of bring something more to it. There's a lot of familiar faces, like, there's a funny scene at the beginning. Chrissy's mom, a very overprotective mom, is Bonnie Hunt. And basically Chrissy wants to know about sex. And of course Bonnie Hunt is really like tight-knit and stuff like that, so she's like, wow, I really wish you wouldn't say sex so nonchalantly. I mean, it's like saying boo to me or something. I wish she'd had more scenes. Samantha's grandma is Cloris Leachman, and she's the one that basically has all the information about... Well, she has the information, but she doesn't want to tell the story. She knows the story of what happened to Dear Johnny and his mom, but it's too traumatizing. But she has an attic full of shit that they can go through. Janine Garofalo is a waitress that everybody thinks is a witch, and she's actually also a fortune teller, and they go to her about all this, too. There's a cameo by Brendan Fraser. He's uncredited as a Vietnam veteran that they just made, I guess, to set the tone. That they just kind of hang out with and have a smoke with, and it's a really good scene. It's hard to tell why it's in there, but there's something really good to that scene. There was a couple of things. If you want to talk about comparisons to My Girl, there is a scene in My Girl where Shelley talks about loving the drive-in, and she tries to convince Harry to go see Love Story at the drive-in. There's a scene in Now and Then where one of the girls is sitting on her roof next to a drive-in theater, and that drive-in is playing Love Story. And also for just a couple of things I can't help but notice that aren't important. This movie is about summoning the ghost of a child, the ghost of a little boy. Devon Sawa plays the main Warmer kid, and his character falls in love with Christina Ricci, and she falls in love with him. If you remember when they brought Casper to human form at the end of Casper, it was them.
Yeah.
And while we're speaking on ghosts, I don't think this was on purpose, but it's just something I always notice. While they're walking through the cemetery, I was really hoping it was Gabby Hoffman, because Gabby Hoffman was the young Demi Moore, but I think it was Thora Birch. I couldn't tell, because she's behind a tree at the time. But when they're on their way to see if the tombstone is still there, one of them says ditto.
Nice.
I can't help but wonder if that was on purpose or not.
Sure it was.
Yeah, so yeah, there are those little things. I'd say all the girls are great. Like, Christina Ricci has a bunch of acting moments, like the scene in the attic where she breaks the mirror and wonders why her mom had to die and why dear Johnny and his mom had to be murdered and all that. And she's basically kind of their fearless leader. Like, she's the one that'll beat up boys and stuff like that. And the story is told from Samantha's perspective. I'm not sure. I guess because she's the one that talked to Crazy Pete in the cemetery is my best guess. My favorite one of the group, though, is probably Teenie. Just because I don't know if it's Thora Birch's performance or if it's just the character itself, but I just think she's the one that really stands out among them, where she doesn't really... There's not really anything she does particularly in the movie to stand out, but just her character's personality in itself, I think, stands out above the rest. There's this one particular scene I always liked where I don't think it was on purpose, but they're painting the garage door, and then the Wormers pull up on their bikes. And she says, "Oh, great, the Wormers are here." And it's like she tries to be cool, and she throws the paintbrush down into the paint can. But when she's not looking, the paintbrush goes into the can and then bounces out of it and lands on the ground. And ruins her little "I'm awesome" moment. And she's the one that dances around in her bedroom and wants to be an actress. She wants to be Audrey Hepburn, basically. The problem where this movie kind of is a little dampened is it's nothing against the actresses at all, but the book ending with them as adults feels a little tacked on. Like, it's almost like they made the movie just as the young girls, and then they went and post and were like, "Man, we should do a plot where they're grown up and put them on the beginning and end." And they don't really... I mean, I know they grew up and went through a lot of changes, but really, Rita Wilson seems to be the only one that actually channels what the other actors went for in the character. The other three kind of seem to be doing different characters than Thora Birch, Gabby Hoffman, and Christina Ricci were. So it feels kind of offset. But no, I still really like the movie a lot. It's just not my girl quality. But I've seen both of them a billion times, and I'll probably see them a billion more times. Which means a billion more tears for all those fucking times I watch My Girl, but fine. So My Girl obviously takes this, but I really love Now and Then too. Despite it being able to... It does kind of lean on cliches, but it makes it work anyway. So, yeah.
So that would be the end of Another Versus. Next week, we're going to talk about some cops. Yeah, that's right. Hey, how's that for vague? AJ, any parting words?
That's it.